Hello there. We're on the floor this morning talking about toxic work environments. If you're dealing with a toxic work environment, this talk will hopefully give you an idea of what you need, what's going on for you, and who or what kinds of supports would really help to work through it. The main thing with toxic work environments is that it's a term that's a little bit woofy or nebulous for people, but it has a lot of intuitive emotional resonance. So if someone says they've got a toxic work environment, I'm a little bit alarmed. I feel like it's my cue to pay a lot of attention. It's pricks up my ears and a number of questions about that's going on. Is it a people thing? People thing being difficult person they're working with, often a difficult boss, a difficult leadership body that might be going through lots of change and imposing metrics that don't make sense or that are unrealistic. It can be quite specific to bullying and harassment or feeling excluded or unsafe in speaking. It can be work that's just soul destroying and you just don't want to do it anymore and you're financially trapped and you don't know how to even think about getting out of it. Toxic is a term that's usually talked about as a physical thing, as something that's harmful to the body, cyanide, arsenic, etc. It doesn't translate that well to work environments, but I guess it's what people grab as a phrase to really convey that something's just intolerable, that the body is just repelling it, can't be digested. And if you really feel into that, it's quite the visceral discomfort of being in an environment which has air that you can't breathe or germs of just the nature of it is that it's harming you and you have to sit there and you have to participate and be professional and use your mind and smile at customers and pretend that everything's okay, which adds to the intolerability of it. It adds to the sense of this is just an impossible clash of how I feel and how I have to behave. It is very much linked to burnout. So people that come to me needing help with burnout often will have environments that they're working in that they'd say are toxic, or cultures that are toxic environments. More, I take that to mean the day-to-day of their work reality of getting up and getting ready to go into it, to the workplace, versus a toxic work culture where there's systems where they can just see the systems are not working and that no one's addressing it. There's problems that are just not being addressed or are pretending to be addressed. So I've definitely had direct experience with this, as well as helping people. And, in the realm of organizational psychology, people that, might be employed to help people within a workplace are not the best fitted, unfortunately, to help them. So I've experienced everything from these really wonderful leadership programs, but they're not actually giving you an opportunity to raise issues about the leadership. So you're learning all these wonderful leadership skills, but how do you actually go about raising an issue, and particularly where there's not much safety in sharing? And as a leader, then there's pressure for leaders to actually sound like they've got this wonderfully psychologically safe workplace and to be seen in that sort of virtue signaling about how much their staff love them. And all this stuff just gets more and more nauseating for people. And it's really a plea for small measures of honesty to be fed into those systems in a titrated way, by a little bit, inserting little bits of honesty in, testing the environment to see who are the safe people, who are the people where you can actually either challenge an idea, express a strong emotion without feeling like you're crazy or you're causing a problem. Or you can ask questions that actually test your experience and go, is this other people experiencing this? And get some more facts and information about what's going on for other people in relation to what you're experiencing. And it rounds it out. And of course, if you're dealing with bullying and harassment, you should be being guided and counselled to write things down and to be really methodical, because you need to establish patterns of behaviour. You need to be very specific about who's around, bystanders, people that are involved, the types of situations where those things are happening, and what you're trying to do to resolve it and whether that's having any impact or not. So there's a certain discipline around being a scientist here, around taking really good observation, asking really good questions. For me, I got through my worst experiences in the last couple of years with being like a detective. I would literally, at night, I would go home and watch detective shows, and I would be picking up clues and writing it out. It might not work for everybody, but it worked for me insofar as I felt like I needed to keep my objective perception really strong. And I didn't want emotions to be colouring the negativity of everything that could have got contaminated from a few interactions. And particularly with doing, in one of the cases, it was having done a whole lot of work that then was kind of dismissed and then not used at all. And I was very attached to it. So I was, had to do my own personal work because I was so invested in this particular project that I couldn't really separate and go, I need to give these people the consequences of their actions. I need to be able to just see what's going on here in terms of how much I had an expectation that work would be a certain way and that this particular project would go a certain way. So there's always a feedback loop coming back at us around what we need to, I don't want to say even what we need to, because I feel like I'm telling people what to do. And I don't really like the whole reliance on that we have to learn things, that these awful experiences are learning experiences. I think that they're very painful and they're very isolating and lonely and they're exhausting. There's a lot of emotional labor that can go into being in a toxic work environment. You can come home just exhausted. You've barely done anything except trying to, if you imagine your body when you've got a bacteria, or you're spending a lot of your energy just trying to process that and to eliminate that. And to your other body systems kind of shut down because the need is to get rid of this bug. And I find that that can be a very powerful comparison insofar as doing physical work and using your physiology in a very proactive way to cleanse as much as you can. And that can be anything from breath work to regular exercise, eating well. And I feel like I'm just going to roll off the list that everybody knows that list. But when you're in those environments, though, you typically don't have much time to yourself or privacy. So if you think about a hospital ward or a teacher, they're surrounded by people and they're having to play out this game of, I'm okay, everything's fine. And inside they're screaming. So the realistic expectation is just to have regular releases or somehow settle into comfort, some find places of comfort in small amounts as often as you can. So the material put together for the Burnout course has a bunch of stuff on this, but it's not by any means unique to me. There's breath work. You've got to keep it. I keep saying breath work because at the moment I'm doing a lot of study on breath work and I'm trying to work out which types of breath work best for different types of stress, and also with ADHD because the sort of helping the deficiency in the brain function and really understanding how to pair your breath work or your body practice with your cognitive, what you actually need to be able to be present and to think through. But there's other things that people do. And also you're going to have to probably give yourself a bit of leniency in terms of maybe you'll just be relying on some creature comforts and just really having really good self-talk about what you're doing to create options to get out of that environment. Sometimes people will have a really specific, I've just got to get through X, Y, Z, and it could be the next holiday. It could be a change of the leadership. It could be some deadline that's coming up that's creating this additional pressure. So they'll have this idea of, I've just got to get to dot. That's kind of part of the story, but I do get concerned that I will just suffer and go through anything I have to. I will just put myself through hell because there's this time frame when it will all finish. Sometimes that works. I get a bit. Why I don't like that is it puts the power in the external thing. And there's no, mental health professional that will generally allow people to give that much power away to something else changing. So we're always looking at how we can resource ourselves differently, how we can release. stress, how we can get better support, how we can set up some more realistic expectations, how we can get the most options to make the best decisions, how we can destigmatize and free ourselves from social expectations about the type of job we should be doing or how much money we should be earning or need to earn. And that's tough. We all hear about the cost of living crisis at the moment, amongst all the other friggin' crises that are constantly in the media. It's saturating, it's nauseating, it's sort of a toxic environment in its own right, the media. So carving out even what you're exposed to, the type of diet you're taking in through your eyes, through your senses, is part of detoxifying. It's not just at work, it's looking at it more holistically, and not to say to shut yourself off from the world and ignore that, particularly if you're interested. And sometimes your job requires being engaged with what's going on in the world, and that's very important for people. But curating, it's a bit like, a librarian, curating good information sources, curating good people that can really be accountable and follow through with giving you help and support and suggestions. So there are a few great things on YouTube, and I will link them into this video because people have already done the work for me. I don't need to double up here on exit plans for workplaces, for if you're in a work situation, and that could be even a small business as well. You could be running a small business and finding it's either you can still have toxic staff and you can still have toxic clients that don't pay you, or it's by no means linked to being an employee. So what really I think captures it for me, though, is this sort of financial attachment and this idea of our professional identity and how much emotional charge is attached to what we do. And that's what really makes it, I can't think of the phrase. What's the phrase when everything just conspires to be a big ball of shit? No, there's a word for it. I won't be able to think of it now. When it's that situation, I have to say it another way, when all the work, when that feeling you've got, when everything that can go does go wrong and more, and you think you're at the bottom, and then you're not even at the bottom, there's another bottom beneath the bottom. And that's the time when you're least able to know what the hell to do. It's a time when you are probably least likely to think, if I go and get help from a mental health professional, it's just going to make everything harder. I'm just going to have to explain all this, and what happens if they're really awful. And it does take time to find a good mental health professional. It's not just like Kmart, go and get whatever's off the shelf. You will need to test people and find one that suits you. And often if you're in distress and duress, that's not the space you're in. You really kind of want more stopgap measures. You want to stabilize. You just want to get enough sense of not being completely snowed under and bowled under by everything until you can pave out some space to actually make those kind of decisions and to have a bit more bandwidth in your brains. So anything else? I've just got some notes here. I think that there's a part here also about scapegoats, family systems. If you're in a therapy context, private therapists will take you to what's being triggered in your personal history, in your psychological makeup, in your personality and temperament and coping skills, etc. There's definitely a place for that. I am at a point now where I see more and more that can be pathologizing the individual too much. I definitely went through this where I used to roll out an abundant set of diagnoses that were all overlapping and not very well distinguished. So in mental health diagnosis, DSM, there's a lot of things that could be multiple disorders, and I just roll them all out to go, there's something wrong with me. I keep working on this. And what I was doing, I was letting the organization and the other people off the hook. I wasn't learning how to have boundaries with other people's behavior. I was interpreting everything like an error or a pathology on my part. And I was missing opportunities to be more objective and to maybe test myself with being unliked or being disagreeable about important things and just saying no to things. And it was really tough because to do that, I was risking pretty much sort of being ostracized. So it was a really awful set of choices, but I know my coping mechanism was just to make myself the sick one, the one that needed to be better and to improve myself. And having done that in multiple environments, in different workplaces, I came to a point where I looked at people like Robert Greene, who's got some awesome resources about really understanding social intelligence and the nature of power dynamics and paying attention to cues in the room about what's going on and really trusting these observations, but had to get the attention of myself because I was making myself the problem all the time, and it was just a problem that was never going to be solved. So these days with therapists, I'm a little bit cautionary about that because they don't know these work environments, that in a lot of cases, they just don't know them. They've got their own issues with, particularly if they're registered clinicians and have to follow very strict rules around providing care. So that they do understand, but some of these other sort of more corporate or big system or all sorts of environments where they just have not had that exposure. So one of the things I really would like to see more of is people within professions actually creating their own networks across organisations around different jobs and roles and understanding what's going on with this profession that's making it so stressful for us. This is outside of unions and pay, outside of those sort of government processes. This is just part of networking, part of being able to cultivate your contract for how you want to work, for what works for you, what doesn't, communicating that up front. Awesome for people with disabilities or neurodiversity, awesome for people with maybe language barriers or cultural barriers where they really need to feel very secure in what they bring to a role, knowing that there's going to be challenges with nonverbal communication and whatever the sort of functions and systems that are part of that work. So back to my notes that are scribbled here next to me on the floor. I think I've covered most of it. No doubt I'll think of something awesome after I press stop recording, but that's okay. I can deal with that. There's always another list, isn't there? All right, love my lists. All right, folks, that's it. I hope you got something from that. Reach out. If you can't find the resources I'm talking about in terms of people that have really great checklists and to-do lists on what to do in this situation, please remind me. Contact details will be concluded here. All right, cool.